As the reality of the ultimate sacrifice hits so close to home.
At our house, he is the known.
Sometimes you just gotta use the right thing.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to That Voiceover Podcast, the show for and about the voiceover industry. I'm Stephen Cox. Today's guest is someone who sat on both sides of the glass, both as a creative director and as a voice actor. As a creative, Michael Everard has worked at the top levels of agencies like Deutsch, Gray, and TBWA, creating campaigns for DirecTV, Burger King, Expedia.com, and pretty much every car company there is. And he's also done his share of voiceover work, most notably as the voice of California Cheese. He's a good friend, and I'm happy to have him here on the program. Michael Everard, welcome to That Voiceover Podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. It's good to be here.
So let's try and bring some perspective to all the voice actors listening. We read tons of auditions. That's what we do. But we almost never think about the person who has to actually listen to all of those auditions, particularly when they come through a place like Voice Bank and there can be over 100. That person's been you on a number of occasions. Talk about what that's like.
Yeah, my favorite part of the day. It's funny. You mentioned that I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and I got to tell you, the auditioning part is way more fun than actually listening to the voiceover auditions. It's a long, often painful process. It's funny. You get something from Voice Bank, and on any given job, I'll have anywhere from 20 to 120 auditions for any job, and the majority of them are just plain wrong. And after a couple hours of that, your brain goes numb, your ears go numb, and you wonder why you're doing it sometimes.
You have to step away and clear your head and renew your perspective.
Oh, totally. It depends. If I can do it in chunks of 20 minutes, I'll usually do that. And you keep pretty copious notes. I have the 5-star system. Like, oh, that was a good one. There's a 5-star job right there. And you try to narrow it down to short lists, and the guys that are even in the right ballpark, a lot of times we'll just put them onto a short list and bring them back and listen again a couple more times. But you figure, like, I'm doing a casting job right now for a 60-second television spot, like the good old days, the old 60s. And you figure 100 of those, that's 100 solid minutes of just listening to somebody read the same script over and over again. So we try to break it up in little pieces and then come back and listen to the good guys second or third time even.
Now, do you listen to every audition all the way through, or do you get to a point where you're just like, you're 10 seconds in and you're listening and you're just like, no, this person's wrong?
Yeah, that happens a lot. It depends. Like so when you first start off, I think you do listen to the audition all the way through, at least the first couple guys. But when you write the spot, or when I write the spot, I'm writing it from inside my head, and I'll probably read that script either inside my head or out loud even, upwards of 100 times myself. So I know exactly what the voice is inside my head. And a lot of times, the voice that comes on just won't fit the personality. It's not even the performance. It's just if you hear a guy that's too squeaky voiced or too deep or trying too hard, then it's easy after just one sentence to go, nope, next. But that usually starts to happen later on down the list as you get tired. You're like, forget it.
There's nothing you can do about it, obviously, but it's better to be first in the list because you get fresh ears.
Absolutely. I mean, if you could control it, that would be top 10 would be perfect. Somewhere in the first 10, you're always someone always makes it into the list, and they become the benchmark. And then after that, it's okay. So who's as good as that guy, or at least close?
Is there a consistent quality in a voice actor, a voice talent that you look for in all the things that you've cast?
Not something across the board. I can tell you that depending on which voice I'm writing for, every voice is a little bit different. Every character is a little bit different. But one of the things that really will get somebody noticed is, and everyone talks about this, but if I can spot range in someone's voice, meaning they can do two completely different things and do it well and not sound like they're forcing either one of them, or if I like a voice, I'll go back sometimes, listen to a house demo reel and listen to some of the other stuff they've done. And if I know they've got the ability to take direction and do 2 or 3 completely different things with a script, even if none of them are right, I can recognize the talent and know that in a studio I can get them to go where I want them on the script. So that's a huge benefit for somebody.
So does it help to have 2 takes on a read? Oftentimes voice actors will want to do 2 takes to show range, but I'm not really sure if they get listened to. Do you listen if somebody submits 2 takes?
Yeah, it's funny because, like I said, if I'm listening to 100 auditions, and that's a lot of time spent, But if somebody has something even interesting and there's a second take, it does help a lot, especially if the take is different. Very often you get two takes that are so close, it really wasn't worth it. But, having been on the other side of the glass, I think sometimes, I think that I've done like a second take that's remarkably different, and it just isn't. And I think so a lot of times those get frustrating for guys like me who are listening to auditions. But typically, no. I think a second take, if it shows the right kind of chops, can help. And very oftentimes I played both takes for my client to prove that the talent that I'm looking at has the ability to take direction well and do different things, even if neither one of them was correct. And it's helped out before.
Now, once a talent lands a campaign, what's your advice on how best to keep that campaign?
Wow, that's I don't know that I've ever seen a voiceover talent lose a campaign because of something they did. I mean, if someone has a gig and they're doing full time and they're always the comeback, you and I worked together. We did the DirecTV campaign,
right?
And I thought the work you're doing was fantastic. And as far as I know,
thank you.
I think you were still working there when I left. You were still on the campaign. But some guys, end up losing the job because there's a new marketing director who wants to put his stamp on things, or creative director above the writer who's picking voices says, we got to change it. He's not doing something that I want him to do, and somebody else with a vision in their head comes up with something. And a lot of times you'll see that coming. You'll see the train coming down the tracks, which is, hey, let's go try something different. I know you've been doing this voice for 6 months or a year and a half. We're going to try something a little more selly. And that somebody upstairs is pushing buttons. And I think the best thing to do is really just sort of ask and understand who's pushing the buttons and who's driving and find out what they're looking for and see if you can deliver on that.
Now, you've had talent contact you over the years, put you on mailing lists, send you updates, pieces of swag, things like that. But how much is too much self-promotion?
Swag would be great. Are you kidding? Tie a red ribbon on it and a couple of tickets to a Lakers game, and you're in, man.
Yeah.
No, honestly, there's not really much of that going on anymore. If I get, I've moved around recently, but even when I was at Deutsche for, I think, upwards of 7 years, I was only getting a couple of unsolicited demos a year. And the truth is they just don't help at all. I mean, I get a random CD of, he could be the best voiceover guy in the world, and if I'm not casting a spot this week, it pretty much goes in the trash bin. There's just no need for it. I know there's a ton of great talented people out there, and I assume when the job comes up and I write the specs that those amazing talent agents out there are going to give me the right person, and the process begins. And there are very few relationships. There's a couple guys that I've worked with in the past that you've had a relationship with, and you'll go to that well, but otherwise, really, it's always a brand new start on every job, and having an unsolicited demo doesn't really help us out.
As I mentioned, you work on both sides of the glass, and so I'm interested in what your experience as a voice actor has taught you as a creative.
Oh, wow. Not to give awful direction, and that I probably very often do. It's funny because it's amazing. Like, you hear somebody trying to explain what they want, and some of the direction they give is just absolutely absurd, and it doesn't make any sense at all. And you know what else I've learned? Actually, this is something that's recently happened to me, is the specs on a script when you're auditioning are amazing. I mean, they're always the same. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written that same spec on several of my own scripts. But in my head, what don't sound announcery means is completely different to somebody else. To me, I don't want the guy who's talking like this. And somebody else, an announcer, is just somebody who reads copy every day, and they want something really conversational. But I guess the one thing I've learned is that the person on the other side of the glass who's directing you is doing his best to communicate what he wants you to do, and it almost never jives with what's inside your head. It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. So I try to use that knowledge when I'm directing talent more so than, I guess it teaches me patience when I'm actually doing voiceover work.
Well, patience is a good thing in this industry. Has your work as a voice actor affected the way that you write copy?
I think so. I mean, like I said, every script I write, I read it out loud to myself 100 times, and I read it out loud to bosses and clients, and to them 15, 20 times. And I have found out that occasionally you'll get in the booth and a really long, wonderfully written run-on sentence is almost impossible to perform on a microphone. And I have a lot of respect for the guys that take that deep breath and nail it without losing their breath. There's that. But I think, it's funny. The script really does, it begins inside the writer's head, and whatever comes out on paper is that guy's delivery. Everything I write has a cadence and a rhythm to it, and that really is what I'm looking for when I hear those auditions. It's almost as you could crawl inside my head and know exactly what I'm looking for. You get the job every time,
Sounds like there's a lot of fate involved with it all.
Fate's a great word. It's funny. I was thinking one of the other things about listening to auditions is, even if you don't get the script right, if you don't get the performance right, you can't get the job, clearly. But even if you do get the perfect read and you're perfectly made for this spot and you nailed that audition and it ends up on my desk, any number of things could go wrong when I'm listening to those auditions. I mean, the phone could ring at the point when I'm listening to your take, and if I'm smart enough or quick enough, I'll hit pause and stop and go back and start over with a fresh head. But I know a lot of times, some voiceovers auditions just get missed. And there is a lot of fate. It depends on what I had for breakfast, what kind of mood I'm in when I'm listening to auditions. I think you have to be good. You have to nail your audition, and then you have to get lucky. And there's a lot of stuff working against it.
So weigh in for us here. Which side do you enjoy more, the VO side or the creative side?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I enjoy the creative process more of writing. I love writing scripts. But I think I would probably rather do full-time voiceover if I could. I think it's, why? I think because I have more success as a writer. I get more things done and more things sold and more good work done. But I think if I was a successful full-time voiceover guy, I think that's so rewarding. I think great performances are a kind of high that you get, with any creative endeavor. But it's a lot of fun.
Well, Michael Everard, as I knew they would be, your insights are invaluable and I think will perk up the ears of a lot of voice actors listening, particularly in regards to what it's like to be on the other side of the glass. So thanks so much for joining us on That Voiceover Podcast.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for calling.
That Voiceover Podcast is a co-production of Half Full and Get Creative Inc. Thanks for listening. I'm Stephen Cox.